Welcome to the Republican Professor. This morning in California, for me, we have a special guest, Tedla Woldeyohannes.
Mm-hmm.
Dr.
Correct.
Tedla Woldeyohannes is
Mm-hmm.
joining us from the great state of Indiana. Welcome, Tedla.
Thank you so much, Lucas, for having me.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Tedla is the author of a book that's been published just in the last few weeks, I think, A
Yes.
Philosopher's Testimony About the God Who Calls. And I'll show you a copy of it for
Mm-hmm.
those listening on Apple, iTunes, or Spotify. Audio only, you won't be able to see it, but you could go to the YouTube and see Tedla's book. You can also click on the link that I will put, which will take you to Amazon, and you can take a look at the book there.
Thank
And
you.
Tedla, you self-published this book?
I did.
Did you edit it yourself?
I just wrote it and I published.
You didn't pay an editor?
I didn't know there was no editor for
Okay.
the book. I just wrote and I published like an email.
This is my first comment
Mm-hmm.
about Tedla's book, which I've read 90% of it, I think.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe a little bit more. I can't remember.
A
I
little
can't
more.
tell.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I would get an A minus if it was just on percentage of the book. I would get the A minus. But I only found less. I think it was less than half a dozen typos.
Yeah, there are a few. I have seen that. Yeah, correct.
So the fact that he did not, and English is your second language, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Second language. Well, anyway, it's not his mother tongue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many languages you speak,
I
but
speak, including English 3.
three. Okay. So Tedla was born and raised in a country called Ethiopia. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically taught himself English, and that's talked about in the book. And for a book of this material to only have maybe five typos that I saw
Yeah,
so
could be
far,
more. Yeah.
so far,
Mhm.
that's amazing. He did not pay an editor, so I commend you for that alone. The book
Thank you for
is
a comment on typos. Typos, I discovered typos in dictionaries. Remember reading that?
yes, that's right.
In English
That's right.
dictionary, typo is just nothing, but they happen.
Tedla, this is a great way to get into the book because two items that you purchased in
Yes.
Ethiopia were a Philips radio and an American Heritage Dictionary. Do you
Uh,
remember which dictionary?
the American Heritage Dictionary was later on. It was a gift from a
Oh.
biology professor later on, but I bought just one English dictionary, just one standard common, a smaller one, not like a
Mm-hmm.
bigger one. Mhm.
Okay. So you bought both or you prized both of those possessions because they helped you learn English.
Yeah, the main reason I bought them was to learn, yeah, to teach myself the English language.
Okay. What year was that?
I don't remember. It's like
90s, late
maybe
90s.
1988.
Oh, in the 80s.
Yeah, late
Okay.
80s, 89 or probably 88, 89, around that.
Your commitment to learning English very early on has proved fruitful for you
Thank you.
as a writer here in America. And I hope that your book sells very well. It's would you classify this book as a philosophy book or as a biography?
It is a combination.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
there
what
are
I was
three
going to say.
chapters. There are three chapters where I put together some content, philosophy content, but
Hmm.
the rest is mostly just intellectual content. My intellectual journey is not about just everything about my life, and
Yeah,
I don't have a life that I think I should worth now writing about, other than my ups and downs when it comes to trying to pursue philosophy. That's the main focus of my book. It's not about just my biography or
hmm,
autobiography.
yeah. Well, when I started the book, I
Yeah.
thought it was just a memoir. I would say that would be the
It is,
genre,
yeah,
memoir.
intellectual memoir. You can add intellectual memoir if there is
Yeah,
anything like that.
I would say memoir,
Hmm.
but also then I realized about halfway through that it would fit with your memoir, that it would also be a philosophy book. And
Yes,
I began,
semi kind of. Yes, something like combination somewhere. Like combination, sorry for the interruption. The philosophy part is a smaller percentage compared to the other.
yes,
Yeah.
well, even the title, look at the title, A
Hmm.
Philosopher's Testimony.
Yes,
Oh,
testimony.
and then
Hmm.
when you read, okay, when you read through it, it's a philosophy of religion book because
Yes,
a religious epistemology, because
yes,
you say you are an evidentialist
mhm,
and testimony is standard
yes,
evidence of God. And
yes,
so and you understand your whole experience in terms of
yes,
evidence for God,
yes,
that
correct,
God exists. Yeah.
correct, correct.
Now, there's so many things that are interesting about this book. Um, and as you as a person, I guess, uh, we can hit, oh my gosh, there's so many. As I was going through this with the first time you mentioned Gordon Clark, I smiled. I smiled
Why did
so
you
many
smile?
times
Why?
because Gordon Clark was a huge part of my journey.
Okay,
Gordon
okay.
Clark, yeah, yeah. I mean, when I still to this day, if I go into a Christian bookstore
Hmm.
and I see Gordon Clark, I have to buy it because it's an
Really?
old one. Well, I mean, if I can afford it,
Yeah.
sometimes they want too much. But
Mm.
there was a bookstore in La Mirada that just recently went out of business. They closed down, and
Oh,
they were selling old classic books like Gordon Clark, Thales to
Cornelius
Dewey,
Plantinga. Hmm.
um, Reason and Revelation. Yeah,
Yeah,
Van
yeah,
Til. I
Dr.
just picked up
Plantinga as well.
a Cornelius Van Til one.
Hmm.
So to see someone from so far away from where I grew up,
Hmm.
you're from Africa. I've never
Yes.
been to Africa. I mean, never been to Ethiopia.
Mhm.
Conversant with these people that are important to me, I couldn't help but smile. And
I see.
so, yeah, Gordon Clark. Is there any particular book that Gordon wrote that stands out to you that really made an
Uh,
impact?
the one that played a role in my struggle about the Trinity and the civilianism, modalism, that one I think was important. And also his book From Tales to Dewey, I think the
Yeah,
title.
that
That
was
one
really
I
helpful.
read. Yeah, I read that book. I think I couldn't stop reading it because it was really well written. And
Hmm.
then I think I can't say a lot about philosophers I have read whose impact is so deep when it comes to which philosopher
Yeah.
we have been reading. But Gordon's was, I think, deeper than any other philosopher because I read it maybe initially for like at the beginning of my journey, especially Christian philosophy stuff. I think
Hmm.
his was had a lot deeper impact, more than any, I can say.
Mm.
But I had to go against his he was so anti-empiricist. He was so purely like a rationalist.
Yeah.
I'm no longer that way. So it took me some serious reading and reflection on Bill Olston's book, The Reliability of Sense Perception,
Hmm.
as an antidote to Gordon Clark's influence on my thinking. I didn't talk
Okay.
about that, I think, in my book, but that is one thing I could have mentioned.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I think I don't know if how wide an audience your book will have if people are not familiar with these names, but for those who are, and there are quite a few people out there that
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
familiarity with this,
Yeah.
probably at least thousands.
Yeah.
Um, but I I I I was enjoying reading it. It brought tears to my eyes many times, smiles many times.
Mhm.
And I know that for me, it's because I know 90% of these names. Either I've met them or I've read them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I know you, and
Yeah.
so every time, every sentence was in your voice that I
Mm-hmm.
was in my mind when I was reading. Every sentence was in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how it would be experienced by people who have not met you or
Yes.
don't know who Quentin Smith is
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Richard Swinburne or Bill Hasker. I don't think I've ever met Bill. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
him. I know I've seen him. I've read his books. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
this might be, we can get into Bill. We'll go back to Gordon Clark in a sec.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you call him Bill. I never called him Bill. Like so I didn't know him in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But William Hasker was one of the first people that was assigned to me to be read by Dr. Gordon, or sorry,
Uh, Doug,
Dr.
maybe.
Doug Grotice. In
Oh,
a
growth eyes.
course,
Okay. Okay.
yes, I took
At Harvard.
metaphysics. I took
Oh, okay.
metaphysics from him in the fall of 1999.
The contours in Christian philosophy or something like that. The metaphysics. I
Yes,
remember. A smaller
yeah,
book. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a small book. That's right. Metaphysics, I think it was called.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where I heard about emergent dualism for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
I might have even thought about open theism for the first time.
Okay.
And so the whole, okay, so this is one of the smiles of my book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading this whole thing about Bill Hasker's influence on your life. And you're in Bill Hasker's office right now at
Right now.
Huntington.
Right now. Yes.
Crazy. That
It
is
is so
awesome.
crazy. Mm-hmm.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he is. He's
Oh,
still
okay.
alive, writing, and we even meet for lunch, maybe
That's
once in a
awesome.
month or once in 2 months. And we email each other pretty much almost every day.
Well, you narrate, for those who haven't read the book yet, you narrate that Bill Hasker, a famous philosopher, a Christian philosopher, and he taught at Huntington College, where Tedla is joining us from now, his office, was talking to you back in Ethiopia back in the 90s, and he
Yes.
was sending you money,
Yes. So just to
and
tell
Bill
this
Alston.
story, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. So this story about Bill Hasker, I think I included that in my book.
yeah.
He had no idea when he sent copies of his book. He included the invoice.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and
then
then you had to pay taxes on that.
yeah, the post office they had to charge me. So they said
Oh man.
they thought I was going to sell the books, and then they said, "Oh, you have to pay." And I'm in Ethiopia, and I didn't have money, and then I had to pay anyway to get the books. And then I told him, "Bill, please, next time if you send me a
Yes.
book, yeah," because he didn't know there would be something like that would happen.
Right.
Then he, I think, felt so bad for kind of forcing me to spend money to get the book. So he sent uh, $20 like to replace what I paid in a book. Another book when he sent there was a $20 bill in the book. I had no idea. He didn't say anything about it. When I was just reading and flipping through the books, I saw it. What is this? And that's how he was trying to address my need at that moment. And we didn't talk about money a lot, but that brought up there was a need. Maybe I want to help this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it came up. I mean, I was not talking about money. I didn't
That.
ask for money, things like that. But it happened, and then we start to
Yeah.
talk about how I live, things like that. That's how he
Hmm.
started to help.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that says a lot about him as a person, and also about you, because your first foot forward in the conversation wasn't your physical needs. Your first foot forward in the conversation was was philosophical stuff.
Yeah.
And you what comes across is your absolute dedication and passion through suffering,
Hmm.
commitment to philosophy, and your belief that God called you to be a philosopher.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the whole time I knew that Hasker was an open theist, and so I was waiting to see if you were going to talk about open theism, and I was
Hmm.
very surprised. I was warmly surprised at your chapter toward the end where you talk about your influence, how open theism may have influenced Bill in his
That's,
financial support of you
yeah.
consistently through all those years. I thought that was very interesting. And it was quite generous of you, because you're not an open theist, to
Yeah.
say, this is an interesting point in favor of open theism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then
Still, I'm
people
not an
listening, they're
authority.
probably like, okay, this is way over my head. I don't know what open theism is.
Hmm.
You do a pretty good job, I think, of going through when you're going through the book, when you use a term, you will usually define it. Like
Hmm.
open theism and Molinism and
Yeah.
theological determinism. You
Yeah.
do usually define the term.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I have a question for you.
Hmm.
On
That's a mini semi-philosophy chapter, so I had to say a little bit about those things. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
say that um, in the chapter on, okay, let me double check here, on natural theology, the one when you say putting it all together.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interesting that you say that because in the whole time I was thinking, okay, if this is a philosophy of religion book, which I think it is,
Hmm.
I was very pleased to see you said putting it all together, chance or
Yeah.
providence, because I thought, okay, an atheist is going to say this is all just
Yes.
Bill is an interesting individual, he's
Hmm.
just a very kind guy. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
And you link it to volition and will of you when you're receiving the evidence God gives you of his involvement in your life, you have to be willing to receive it.
Yeah.
And my question to you is then, but why did you have this will, this volition to accept the evidence,
Uh,
you
why
think?
do you have the will? That's a little bit tricky question. We
Yeah,
do have the will, of course, but how did you decide to exercise it or something like that,
right.
maybe?
Hmm.
So, by the way, my dissertation, I don't think we'll talk about it today, probably another time, but my dissertation is on the role of volition in coming to know God.
Hmm.
So, since that is where I come from in my dissertation,
Is
I
that
spent a
Moser stuff? That is that
Mother
primarily
and a mother. Okay, so the volition stuff comes from mother,
okay.
just to give credit to. When it comes to my dissertation and religious epistemology, it comes from mother, and I mean, his account of volition is the one that I kind of embrace. And
We're talking about
then
Paul K. Moser, who's at
Paul came
Loyola
on, yeah, of course,
University in
sir.
Chicago.
But there is also a difference between his view and my view. I go against his view when he rejects natural theology or arguments for God's existence, the standard traditional arguments. So that's where we differ. And then my dissertation was trying to address, or I tried to address this issue. People do not even consider the role of the will when it comes to formation of religious beliefs, not just beliefs in general. So I started thinking about it before I start reading. Even I don't think reading more than influencing me, but
Hmm.
later on I discovered his work to be, of course, very congenial, conducive to my own thinking. But it's not like our perceptual beliefs, belief formation about God. There's something different, I said. And then I started to explore that one. And then comes this idea of evidence, religious experience, and my view of religious experience is wide open. I am not going to say uh, the religious experience must be like this. There is no formula to it because it involves the will of a human agent and the will of God, of course. When we have two wills coming together, some kind of interaction to give a formula would reduce, volition to something like mechanistic. Something. So I cannot go that way. And then how do we decide to exercise our will? You consider all the evidence, available evidence, and then you might start to think to have inclination to form a belief, and then at some point people decide, of course, not just at the sheer saying, oh, I just must decide. But given the evidence can suggest that it's the right thing to believe, and then you say, yeah, it makes sense. You believe. Then that kind of role for experience and volition is something missing in the literature, and Paul Moser does not accept, of course, doxastic voluntarism. I go against William Alston because he was an arch enemy of doxastic voluntarism. Of
Yeah.
course, he is. And then Plantinga. And I said Mozart. I don't know anyone as a Christian philosopher who decided to go the way I did. And then I said, I think there's something that has to be explained. And
Hmm.
then experience, God can't talk to me in any way. God can't talk to me through you right now. And then in my
Right.
view, I have to be open. Anything
Yeah.
that connects our understanding of, interpret our experience anyway, naturalists or atheists or believers or whatever. We
Yeah.
have a way of interpreting our experience. No experience just comes in isolation.
Right.
So we do explain. And then that chapter, the one you mentioned, putting it together,
Hmm.
chance or providence, that one I wrote for atheists, by the way. Atheists in mind, I'm thinking about them. So believers, they will say, okay, just a run like regular random,
Right.
but it doesn't matter. But atheists, they need some way of thinking about it. So that's why I wrote
Yes.
that, exactly. So that's how I decided to write. And then we can also decide. There's a book title for my next book. Can we decide to believe in God? That will be
Mm.
developing my ideas from my dissertation.
Can I
And
ask
many
a
philosophers will say no, including probably you.
can I ask a clarifying question about Paul Moser's
Like
view? You said he rejects natural theology, but
altogether.
he's an evidentialist, right?
Yes, he's a good hardcore evidentialist. He is.
Okay. How do those two things fit together? The
So my
rejection of natural
evidential,
theology and evidentialism.
yes. So I should say my evidentialism is Paul Moser's evidentialism, or almost more or
Okay.
less. So he takes experience as evidence.
Hmm.
And now here is something that's not clear. I mean, he has been writing tons of, a lot of stuff on this topic. When it comes to experience, I said I'm wide open to God communicating God's reality to any human agent who is open to consider any evidence, right? And it could be dramatic, like Apostle Paul. It could be slow. It could be talking through the scripture. It could be talking through a friend.
Hmm.
It could be, through the sunset or watching whatever. So I cannot say exactly this or that. And Paul Moser doesn't say clearly what evidence should be in one sense, but he mostly talks about our conscience, moral
Okay.
conscience playing a role and God intervening in our moral conscience. So have been
Gotcha.
waiting for years for him to develop a full-blown account of that. For some reason, he hasn't done that, but still I am in communication with him. I just started editing a book on his religious epistemology, so I'm going to ask him to develop that further. So
Okay.
that's where he is, and then he rejects all arguments for God's existence, the traditional ones, because they do not address volition, of course, and they
Hmm.
do not. Yeah, that's the one reason. And God, in his view, is morally perfect agent and morally
So
perfect agent. You
so
can't get that from arguments.
would it be fair to say that Paul Moser would take, for example, the Kalam cosmological argument? Would he say that's completely worthless in
Yes,
terms? It's totally worthless.
it is
Doesn't
even
give us anything, and it doesn't move the ball down the road at all.
never, no, no. Even in his view, he is very clear.
Okay.
Not just he's not just against. He's not saying those arguments do not have really some real value, but he's even against them. They distract us from a
Oh.
genuine quest or search for God,
Hmm.
because the God, the way he understands God, is he's volitional, he's morally perfect, worthy of worship, and
Right.
those arguments they do not get even close even to establishing as a conclusion. The God that's worthy of worship, volitional, morally perfect, blah blah. They
Yeah.
don't. So
Gotcha.
they distract us. We should even avoid them. They are even bad for
Well,
questioning.
Quentin Smith would definitely take issue with that because,
Yeah,
by the way, that was one of the most enjoyable parts of
my book. Yeah,
the book.
yeah.
Was Quentin Smith, who taught for a while at Western Michigan University, and I'd only heard about him secondhand
Hmm.
from Jonah Schupbach, who
Oh, okay. He was a
okay,
student. Yeah.
he was a student there. and I think it was Jonah. It must have been, because I don't know how else I would have known. It had to be Jonah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, it, it he maybe it might have been another professor that knew him that said that he slept in his office at school,
yeah,
and that it was crazy. I mean, it was like he would have like food in there from like 2 weeks ago, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
papers, and so that I already had that view of him, and then not no judgment. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that that's how I knew about him. And then
yeah.
when you filled out some of the why, I think
Mhm.
a bit
Yeah,
more, why he was like that, because you presented him as being he could be easily distracted and not even eat for
yeah, yeah,
days
yeah,
because he was so obsessed.
yeah,
So in other words, he lacked the self-care. He wouldn't get sleep,
yeah,
he wouldn't get exercise, sunlight, he wouldn't even feed himself. And it's
no,
like,
yeah,
oh my gosh.
yeah. Very, very
And you
sad
guys were like
situation.
kind of caretaking him, almost like you were helping him with his books. And but
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
it's just presentation of a man who's dedicated in the extreme. Like he would open packages of books and then just leave them there.
yeah, yeah,
And sometimes he had to reorder the books because he didn't know where his
yeah,
copy was.
yeah,
And you present a fuller picture of him, but also a gentle soul
yeah,
who was not, even though he was an atheist,
yeah.
committed atheist, or actually you describe him as a pantheist, which I
He's,
thought
yeah,
was
he was an
very.
actual. Yeah,
Would he
actually.
accept that? Would he accept
Yeah,
a
in
pan?
his book, I have his book right here. I'll show you. It's
He
here in my
says that?
office.
Okay. I just thought that was your interpretation.
Here is his book. The title is Ethical and Religious Thought in Analytic Philosophy of Language.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember the year. In this book, the last chapter, he is clear about his commitment to. He's a pantheist. I mean, he's an atheist, of course, in the sense that he rejects, the
Right.
Christian God or Abrahamic God.
Yes. Okay.
And he's a naturalist, pantheist, something like that. I mean, he changes his positions, but that's like his
Okay.
core view. Yeah,
Well, when you said he was a pantheist, I thought initially, I thought, huh. But then when I finished reading the chapter, I realized that isn't best explanation for that was an interesting explanation for the
mhm,
presentation, is he thinks the universe is so holy that he
yeah,
has to explain he's he's committed to understanding it, why it
yes,
exists
yeah.
without God, right?
Yeah, he
Why would
worships the
anything exist?
yeah, he worships the universe basically.
That's your question too. Why does anything exist rather
Yeah.
than nothing?
So I love him. I have a plan to write a larger more philosophy content thing on Quentin Smith at some point. He gave me a permission to write if I want to write a full book on his work. Yeah, I
Oh,
have a permission. Yeah, so I will
wow.
go back and I want to do this. Just between us now and then whoever is listening or watching.
Yeah.
He has this view, and now I don't know how I got this view myself, but I have seen for years. Uh, I am okay. So as a believer, as a Christian, and I am also committed to some view about philosophy and search for truth in general. And when it comes to search for truth regarding God, I find atheists who simply reject arguments for God's existence and who do not do more work. I think that I really object. That I think is not
Mhm.
a correct way of committing oneself to searching for truth.
Yeah.
If theism is false, I mean, for atheists, that means this view is false. Okay,
Right.
then
Right.
they really care about truth? If they do, like Quentin Smith, the meta
Hmm.
philosophy of naturalism, his essay, he was building a system. He was saying, hey guys,
Yeah.
atheists, you are not doing your work.
Mm.
Believers, they have done their work. They are wrong, but they have done their work. So
Yes.
we have to do our work. That was also my view. It just coincided with his view. I
Yeah.
want to take this project further, and then I'm going to develop it. I had a conversation with an Ethiopian, a friend who is an atheist, in an Amharic language a few days ago. And in that discussion dialogue, we've discussed this idea. So instead of the burden of proof now being on theists, I am going to argue the burden of seeking truth. It should
Yeah.
be for both. Yeah. Then I
Yes.
want to develop that further, and then I want to honor Quentin Smith.
That's
That is
very
his
kind.
what he was doing. It he was not just looking for arguments to demolish our theistic arguments. He was saying we need to give an explanation. If
Yes.
theism is false, what else is the best explanation why the
Right.
universe exists? And to his credit, Graham Opie is doing that work now. He's doing,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, he's doing this work. He's building a worldview
Hmm.
to compare theistic worldviews and a naturalistic worldview. He's an atheist, but his view is more like a naturalist, a committed naturalist, of course, who is an atheist. He's not just arguing for atheism, but he's making a case for naturalism as a rational, preferable view compared to theism. So
Yeah.
two packages. So I'm fine with that kind of comparison because that gives people a motivation to develop their views about why
Right.
anything exists. When believers they say God, I want atheists also to tell me why they think the universe exists.
Yeah. So
Uh,
why do you think that there is something rather than nothing?
yeah, if the question is for all human beings, not for believers or no.
I would think.
Yeah,
It
so
is
I
a
am
really
going
it's a kind of
to
a jarring question. The first time you hear it, it might not sound that impressive, but if you reflect on it a bit, it can become quite disturbing.
yes, it is. And Josh
Yeah.
Rasmussen, our friend Josh Rasmussen, he's working on this all the time. Like, why is there anything out there? So yeah, so that's I'm going to I will keep working on that to honor I think Quentin Smith.
Oh, good for you. I
Yeah.
noticed that Graham Oppie made a comment on your book
Uh-huh.
in the back. What's he
Yeah.
like as far as temperamentally? Is he similar to Quentin Smith? Is he friendly?
Uh, he is friendly. I mean, I called him Saint Graham Opie. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, he's friendly. He's a very smart person. He knows a lot about what he does. A
He got
brilliant
up at
person.
5 o'clock a.m. to get it on your
Yeah,
Zoom call.
he's a very kind person. So I had to honor him by calling him Saint.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's friendly. I mean, he did that twice for me, and he would do it more. I mean, he's a very good person. So he's also a genuine person when it comes to asking questions about God. He's not pretending. He's not just dismissing atheism. He's working really hard
Hmm.
to give an alternative view. If theism is false, I think we should say Graham Opie is getting things right. Of course, I don't agree, but he's doing his work. I
So
value.
when you teach philosophy, do you start with the question, why does something exist rather than nothing?
At some point I do when we discuss metaphysics. Yeah,
What
yeah.
what is the what's the Christian answer to that?
God. What else? I mean, then you can do analysis of the concept of God or the nature
I
of
wish
God.
I could have been a fly on the wall listening to you and Quentin Smith and Graham Oppie.
Yeah, I mean, Quentin Smith had no problem with thesis. He really loved working with them, trying to tear apart, and he was so honest. At some point,
Mhm.
when I wrote my graduate seminar paper to interact with his work,
Yeah.
and I came up with some arguments to show, there is a problem with this view, but I was not confident about some part of my paper. I had to ask Alex Bruce, and he also said, yeah, you are right about the mathematics part. Then I
Mhm.
show Quentin, and for his class, of course, he said, yeah, you refuted my work. If this was already not published, I wouldn't publish it.
Wow.
That is Quentin Smith, how honest he is. And one day we were at a pub in Kalamazoo with grad students. He doesn't drink, he didn't drink, he would just go there, water, and then talk philosophy. And the students were just asking him questions, his own views, challenging his views, and he would change his view. He said, "Yeah, I think I'm wrong," and he moves on, and he comes up with a different view. The following day, two or three, no problem.
Hmm.
So he would just change his mind,
Huh.
but not about the ultimate now commitment, because that is a little bit
Not
more
about that
complicated.
though.
Yeah, I mean, there are other things here and there. He adjusts, and then he tries to see.
What explains his ultimate commitment then?
Because he I think he was convinced the views he developed. Okay, he says this. I think in my book I said this. He had this worry about now what explains exactly why the universe exists, and he comes up with different theories, and then he publishes them. Then people criticize, then he publishes again another one. Then he has like different theories, and then I had to ask him, what would be something that you would regret when you die at some point in the future? He said, I would regret dying not knowing what or which one of the theories I have been working on is true.
Hmm.
That was the response.
That's not
And
usually what people think of when they think of the term regret. Usually,
yeah,
the term regret has to do with something you did or didn't do.
yeah. So he wanted to find out the truth, and then he was not sure which one of those theories he developed
Right.
or whether theism was true, but especially his own preferred views. He was not sure. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to him for years before he passed away.
Hmm.
I don't think he had anything new. I think that was the way things were.
Gotcha. What
Yeah,
was it like working with Tim McGrew? Did you take classes from him?
yeah, yeah. More than one class. I think he's really, really, really great. He's super sophisticated, and he's a probability machine. He's really good, a very good person as well. Very, very good person.
Did you get more of an appreciation for inference to the best explanation working with him, or the
Uh,
same?
Yet I think I did, and
Because you do
he and
mention inference to the best explanation in your book, and at some point you mention it and you say, "Yes, this
I
is my
think
methodology."
that's Paul Mother's view as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul Mother's view as well. But when it comes to evidentialism, I think Tim's work initially made some good impression on me. When I was writing I wrote my first essay for his class, and we were reading his new book. It was like a manuscript of his book on externalism or something, internalism and externalism, I think. It's a very really good book. So my initial reaction was to argue against his view.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we were talking about it. And then my problem still, I mean, evidentialism a good view, but when it comes to as a theory of knowledge, justification is perfectly fine. But when it comes to theory of knowledge, externalists, they get something easily right. It's
Yeah.
easier for them to do it.
Yeah.
So I had that question for also Tim in my paper. So to
Hmm.
give me an account of knowledge as
Yeah.
an internalist, as evidentialist. So
Right.
that was the kind of issues we discussed. But I had no issues with evidence playing a role. And as far as I can tell, I have always been evidentialist without even knowing the term. And reason needs to play a role anywhere. That's the way I understand things. It's very hard for me to remove a reason or reasoning or evidence from
Yeah.
anywhere, about anything, about faith or something. So that me and his view, I think, influenced me. And later on, Paul Moser's view also of evidence is also, yeah, of some
That was the
degree.
next question I was going to ask you is when did you become an evidentialist, and did you ever waver from evidentialism?
Okay, no. So Plantinga's view, externalism and Plantinga's warrant proper function or whatever his view is, reformed epistemology in general, that had some influence in me initially. I was just because I was very impressed with Plantinga's philosophy in general,
Yeah.
and his view is so influential. And
Talking about Alvin Plantinga, University
Alvin
of Notre
Plantinga.
Dame.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so and also William Olston. For me, William Olston's reliabilism and also was also reformed epistemology. Not like exactly the same way with Plantinga. Their views are really good impact on the way I think about beliefs and the rationality of beliefs.
Hmm.
But I could never be convinced with this idea. Beliefs could be rational, but I am after the truth. Are they true? And
Right.
can I know? So when it
Yeah.
comes to that, leaving that question to some mechanism of belief formation, that could never satisfy me. So
Yeah.
I am fine with the way of accounting about how we form beliefs and the reliability, things like that, and even proper function, design, whatever. At the end of the day, I have this question: Do I really know those beliefs are true, and
Right.
how do I know? That question brings back internalism,
Yeah.
no matter whether it's good or bad, and I would go with internalism. And then
Yeah.
internalism and reason and evidence. Am I attending to evidence, reason? Yes, and then that's where I want to go. So that's where I am still.
So the internalist in epistemology about justification, right?
Yes, yeah,
About the definition of knowledge, justification, or the whatever that feature of knowledge you want to call it,
yeah,
warrant. Well, that you have to have some kind of access to
yes,
the process by which you become justified, or that evidence is working toward giving you knowledge. Is that
yeah,
fair, or would you say it differently?
yes, yes. And then here comes this complication about my obsession with intuitions, philosophical methodology
Mhm.
when I was at Biola.
Oh yeah, I remember that very well. I remember
Yeah,
because you're the first one that ever got me thinking about
so
what
I had that.
intuitions are and why
Yeah,
how do we trust them.
so it goes back to that problem, philosophical methodology, and then
Yeah,
you go to
right.
internalists, and then you even about the laws of logic.
Yes.
And yeah, when I had
You can't escape using intuition. You can't.
yeah,
But is that a consideration for the evidential value of them? I think
yeah,
that was your concern.
yeah, exactly. So if everyone relies on their intuitions, and if intuitions of course conflict,
Mhm.
and then where do we go? When there is a conflict of intuition, where do we go to settle that
Can you
dispute?
give an example of where intuitions conflict?
I mean, some people about free will. Someone can say, no, yeah, we have free will, and another one can deny it. Internalism,
Okay.
externalism, anything about counterfactuals, whether they are true or the modernism stuff. People say, I mean, yes, I can just think about this. The counterfactuals are just they're obviously true, someone says.
Hmm.
So what ground is them? Nobody knows, right? And there is this sense of they're true. Some may say, no, they cannot be true. There is this debate always. Even when it comes to the laws of logic,
Mhm.
I had to press Alex Proust it's in my book as well. I had to press him. So what happens when we get to the bottom of all the debate and the nature of logic? Can we have any independent way of judging whether the laws of logic without relying on intuitions, whether the laws of logic are true or they hold? That was very tough. He did admit, of course, and people who take time to think about this, they
Right.
see the problem. So when it
Yeah.
comes to
What did
intuitions,
Proust say? What did he say to that?
it, I mean, he
You're talking
didn't say
about
this. I
Alexander
think I
Proust,
said
and where hold on, I gotta identify who you're talking about just for everybody.
Alex
You're
Proust,
talking
so
about
for
Alexander
mathematician.
Proust, who's at
Yes,
Baylor, is that right? Or
yes,
where's
Baylor, yeah.
Baylor? Okay.
I quoted him in my book about that part.
He
When I
has
was
two
going through,
PhDs.
yes, when I was going through the philosophical crisis, the one I mentioned in my book, that's when I was thinking, so what can I do about
Right.
the laws of logic? And he said, and generally, of course, they are reliable that we can tell. It would be really hard for us to deny that they work.
Hmm.
And we don't really need to rely on our intuitions, kind of, but that kind of stuff. But still, I could have pressed them. I didn't want to do that.
Right.
I mean, I can still press any philosopher who wants to avoid relying on intuitions. Just give me an account of whatever you take to be fundamentally true, but do not rely on your intuitions. Do not anywhere. Do not say to me, it seems to me, or it
Yeah, you
makes
can't
sense
do
to
it.
me. Don't say that and just give me an account. That is a tough
You
thing.
can't do that, right? I don't think
Yes,
you can do.
that's what I'm just trying to say. So
Yeah,
what
gotcha.
accounts for the reliable? If we have to rely on them, we need to give some account for why
Yeah.
at least some fundamental intuitions about fundamental issues
Well,
are
getting really
reliable.
clear about that, I think, is very helpful.
Yeah, so that was my struggle, and then I moved away from that. But still,
Yes.
I'm not saying I am done with that. Of course, it's, as long as you do philosophy, it will be there.
Right.
Yeah,
Um, Seems like okay, at the most basic level, I don't want to keep beating this horse, but like the most basic level, if you deny an intuition, the best, I'm talking about the best intuitions.
yes,
It's a reductio ad absurdum, right? It reduces
yeah,
to absurdity. But
yeah.
then you reject the absurdity based on the intuition that the absurdity
Again, yeah,
can't
it's
be the right
almost
answer.
exactly, exactly.
So
Then
you always will have the intuition there.
yes, then we have to look for a better way of which view say naturalism and then go back to a world view.
Right.
You know, is there a world view that uh, explains in some way, in a better way, uh, our cognitive faculties? Now you can go back to Plantinga, okay?
Right. Right.
Okay. So is there any design plan, for example, that allows us, or it's a legitimate way for us to think about this, how our mind, our thinking, our cognition is supposed to work? And
Right.
then intuition is just part of it. Intuition is not like something completely different.
Right.
And the way our perceptual faculties work, we have also sensory divinitatis for Plantinga, okay? And then you can also add intuitions. And they have to do the work at some point. And then if we want to remove completely any reliance on intuitions, even if we do science, I mean, scientists, they can get to the bottom of issues, then when philosophical questions come up for scientific, inquiry, are they going to verify every single thing using scientific method? Of course not. I mean, they will still prefer now, they have theories must be prepared based on some issue. Simplicity, okay,
Right.
simplicity, come on, simplicity is it like part of a scientific method? Is that
Right.
okay? So the theory preference about parsimony, all those things, they come down
Right.
again to the way we put together our worldview, and
Yes.
within that worldview, we say this makes sense to me. That's where I am now.
Right.
And then, okay, another person can say something different, and of course, people can work together, or they can still, keep developing or pursuing the way they understand, the
Let me
questions.
go back to Ethiopia.
Okay.
Before you came to the US, in your background, when did you come to believe the Trinity?
Okay. So
And I'm
initially,
assuming you still believe the Trinity.
I do. I
Okay.
am still a Trinitarian.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
Maybe I
were
will
there
not
any
say
challenges to the Trinity when you grew up in Ethiopia?
no. So, I was a Marxist, Leninist when I was a teenager. There's no Trinity, so no religion. And then I became a believer. Now it was so surprising to hear from you that your grandfather was a board member for ICR.
Yes, he
Small world.
was. You
That's
can blame
unbelievable.
you can
I couldn't
blame
believe
some
that.
of ICR on my grandfather. No, I
Yes.
actually I have a lot of their classic stuff and I really enjoy it, actually. I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
enjoy it.
I
Yeah.
had most of the books from Dr. Gish and Dr. Morris. When I came to the States, of course, I left the books back home.
Oh.
And later on, a friend of mine donated those books to Ethiopian Graduate School of Theology. So they
Oh,
are
is
in
that
that
right?
library. Yeah, they
Oh,
are there.
good. I'm glad
Yeah,
they're not
so
destroyed. Good.
they no destroy. I mean, they have
Oh,
value.
I hate
They have value.
people who destroy books. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no. So I asked my friend to donate them to the
That's
library. So
awesome. That's awesome.
yes, when I became a believer initially, a Christian, so I had no idea about the Trinity, things like that. So
Mhm.
I ended up in a church.
Hold on one sec.
Yes,
ICR is Institute of Creation Research in El
correct.
Cajon, California.
California. Yes,
That and we're talking about Dr. Dwayne Gish and Dr. Henry Morris, two of the big names
yes,
there. And my
exactly,
grandpa was on
exactly.
the board. Okay,
Yes, that,
go ahead.
that
Go
that's
ahead.
so interesting to
Yeah, yeah,
you say that in your email. You said what? So by the
yeah.
time when I was corresponding years ago, maybe when Dr. Gage, Dr. Morris, when they
Was
had
this through the
copy,
mail?
yeah.
Is this through the post, the postal service, the mail? You was
No,
this
here is the
letters
problem.
or was
So
this
okay,
emails?
it was mail. It was mail then.
Mail.
Yeah. Then there were no email until 2000 or something. Until when I started to use emails. Before that, it was mail, of course. And then okay,
There's a
so
point in the book where the word email first occurred, and it was kind of it's early-ish in the book, but it's not right away. So
yeah, but
at some point,
email. Yeah, email. I started to use email probably in 2001, probably
okay, all
2000,
right,
2001. Before
okay.
that,
It
I was
was
using so
letters. When you
yeah,
say letter,
letters.
you mean letter. Yeah. Okay.
Letters, exactly. So when I was corresponding with the philosophers initially, Plantinga and or
Uh-huh.
Peter Van Nogen and others, so I became a believer, and there was this church, Oneness Pentecostals, I think in America.
Yes,
In
you
Ethiopia,
mentioned.
we have a different name, and they don't, of course, believe the Trinity. So I was there. I believed what I was taught, and it made sense. And then I started reading the scripture closely, and then I started to wonder whether that view was correct. I was arguing with everyone, with people from that church, and then I had friends, of course, who were Trinitarians. And I argued with them, so I was not sure what to do. And I could tell it was a very important doctrine for Christianity. And
Yeah.
then I came across from the Trinity Foundation back to Gordon Clark. Okay,
Oh,
Gordon Clark. So the Trinity
really?
Foundation had the president was John Robbins, probably, if you remember John Robbins, I think, yes, that was his name. So he was the director for the Trinity Foundation. All Clark's books, audios, whatever, everything was under, he was using them, distributing or selling after Clark's death. So I
Okay.
had correspondence with him, and he sent me a 4-page summary of the Trinity from Clark's book, which had the title like the Trinity.
Mm.
Then that's when I started to say, okay, so there is a contradiction. That was what I said. Oh,
Right.
it's contradictory view, and people, whoever says the doctrine of the Trinity has a problem, they usually talk about the contradiction.
Right.
And then Clark basically says, no, the sense in which God is one is different from the sense in which God. So different senses.
Right.
First, oh, I said, what? And then I started to think, these are like something, this so easily, I'm at least making distinctions, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Trinity is easy or explanation is easy, but I'm
How
saying
how old were
that
you
I didn't
when
see that, huh?
how old were you when you said what?
In my 20s,
Okay.
in my 20,
So you
late
so
20s
you
or
knew what a
something.
contradiction was. You knew
Yeah,
what
yeah,
a
yeah, of course.
contradiction was compared to a paradox.
Yes, I was aware of that because of just reading theology books here and there. And then Gordon Clark he was Aristotelian. I think he loved the law of non-contradiction
Oh
so
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Every word in his writing it played a key role. And then he showed that he said, if there's no contradiction, of course, when it comes to the Trinity, logical contradiction, I mean, then I just lost one reason why I did not believe in the Trinity, and then it was like
Right.
a scale falling off my eyes. It's oh, okay, now I believe in the Trinity, and then of course I started to learn more. Here's
Mhm.
one point: I did correspond with Bellingham Evangelistic Association
Really?
theologians who, yeah, I corresponded with so many theologians
Oh my
asking
gosh.
questions about the Trinity,
Wow.
and then I did not get adequate answers that kind of responded to my logical contradiction issues. When I read Gordon Clark, he said, philosophers know how to make distinctions. That was like one of those important moments for me to see I already saw the value of philosophy. I said, oh, philosophy can help.
Right.
Yeah, then I kept reading more. And then it's not like something I always read about or think about, but that was something I read a little bit more for years initially, and then I started teaching, how the doctrine of the Trinity is important in Ethiopian churches or some Bible schools. So that's what I did for years.
I'm looking at your page 72. You have an outline of your Trinity
Yes.
paper, and one on number 3 on Roman numeral 3,
Mm.
3.2. You say the being versus person of God. So this would be a great paper. I wanted to. It is odd how we talk about God. It's a little odd
Yeah.
because we'll
Yeah.
say he as if it's just
Yeah.
one. I mean, person,
Mhm.
because he's personal
Yeah.
pronoun. So we'll say
Yeah.
he this and he that, and then
Yeah.
who are you talking about? God. I'm talking about God. Well then,
Yeah.
but but we do make this distinction between the being and the person of God.
Mhm.
How does that sound weird to you?
If the Trinity does not sound weird, I mean, we have to think of again. It should sound so weird
Yeah.
because unlike anything that we are familiar, we know, we think about. So yes, it sounds weird, but ultimately, uh, weird things happen anyway in physics, quantum physics as well.
Right.
So people,
So
say, "Oh, the
weirdness is
Trinity."
not evidence that it's not true.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, if that weirdness or strangeness or some craziness about a view is,
Yeah.
evidence for its being false, we should just reject quantum physics or something like
Yeah. I'm weird. You're weird.
that. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, but you obviously exist. So,
So, and
yeah, that
then
makes
here's
sense.
one thing. I mean, yes, it does sound weird, but by the way, it's probably interesting to just mention this here. So, I mentioned J.C. Bill in my book somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so he
University
has
of
a book.
Connecticut.
Yeah, he is now at Notre Dame, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he is now at Notre Dame. He has a book which will be coming out maybe within a year with Oxford University Press, and he wants to address this issue of weirdness, strangeness, apparent contradiction or real
Oh,
contradiction by
that's great.
saying the Trinity is an actual contradiction, the
Oh,
divine contradiction. He has a book now.
oh, so he's not a Christian?
He is a Christian, but he embraces contradictions,
Oh,
logical
man.
contradictions.
That's not
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I mean, he had a book on the incarnation, the contradictory Christ. Have you heard about this? Yeah,
No, no, I don't
yeah.
follow him.
I I I invited him for a public lecture at the university where I am now, Huntington. He came last March. He gave a public lecture on his book, The Contradictory Christ.
Wow.
And then he's a non-classical logician, and he is saying, we have been trying to solve the logical problem of the Trinity. Forget it. Embrace the contradiction. Move on.
So he did publish this book?
He The Trinity one is not published yet. Yes,
Okay.
but I have the manuscript. I have started reading it. I have to go back, and I am going to teach philosophical theology this semester, this fall semester. So I'm going to invite him to talk about his book to my students through either Zoom or in person if you can come here. So this is where philosophers are now. I mean, some philosophers, or at least J.C. Bill. It's weird. Yeah, it is weird, and it should
How
be.
how could he be at Notre Dame and not at Notre Dame at the same time and in the same respect?
But he wouldn't apply that kind of view to everything. He would apply that only to the ultimate reality or to God.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, I mean, people usually, of course, ask him, bring this issue about contradictions can be true, explosion, it could be about anything. No, he says some principles. There has to be some principles that limit how this contraction should not explode or expand or apply to everything. So he has a way of doing that. I
All
said
right.
logical stuff. This is not my stuff. That is his stuff.
Gordon Clark is turning over in his grave right now.
Yeah,
Tedla.
totally. And many other philosophers even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually,
But I
all of
mean,
them.
this is
Maybe not
something.
Kierkegaard.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a legitimate philosophical inquiry. I'm totally open to it. I just started working on an essay to develop a religious epistemology that can make sense of what J.C. Bill is working on.
Oh, good for you.
But I
It's
don't know
very
where I'm
charitable.
going. I don't know. I'm just trying to see. I had him in my class just to talk with my students, and I had like some interactions. I do interact by email. I want to see how he does reject also arguments for God's existence, like Paul Moser. Just this something.
Hmm.
He hasn't published on that, but I am trying to get him, write something and publish on his view on religious epistemology. He hasn't done writing, of course. He has just his thinking. So I want to see whether rejecting the law of non-contradiction in some domains can still allow us, to embrace some doctrines are contradictory and it's still rational or something. So I'm just trying to see where we can go with this view. I will probably reject or I don't know what I will do. This is just
Yeah.
an open question now.
Well, I thought that was pretty funny. The little anecdote that you give of Peter Van den Wagen, um,
Uh-huh.
where he, okay. So Peter sent you $500,
Yeah.
and this is on page 95.
Yeah.
And you said he didn't respond to your jokes, but I thought your jokes are pretty funny because Peter's
Yeah.
view metaphysically is that the things like
Hmm.
tables and chairs don't exist. There's elementary particles that exist table wise and chair wise, right? Okay.
Yes.
So then you you said that dollar bills and Ethiopian money do not exist. Jokingly, I said that Peter sent me something that does not exist. Peter did send me these books, and I also told him that since books do not exist, he sent me non-existing things. Or to be more exact, he sent me elementary particles arranged dollar bill wise. Peter did not write back about these jokes. I laughed. That was great. And there's a lot of,
Yeah, I mean,
to me, there's a lot of funny things. I'm not sure if you meant to be funny at all the places I laughed, but
yeah, I mean, little philosophical, commentaries here and there, and for people who are not familiar and people who are familiar.
yeah,
When you think about Peter Van Wagen, how smart he is, how influential he is,
a lot of
many
people say
people,
he's intimidating.
intimidating, of course, and many people, I am sure, have no idea how generous he was to me. So I want to acknowledge that.
That's very nice. Yeah.
And he was the one who sent me like 500 once, and I was not, what's going on with this person? I'm so generous, incredibly kind. It was an immediate response. And then, of course, I joked like that. And then I had a chance to meet with him a few times after that. Did I mention that he came to Western Michigan to? Yeah, I did. I think in my book. Yeah, Quentin
I don't
Smith
remember that
invite.
part.
Yeah, Quentin Smith. I asked Quentin Smith to invite Al Plantinga to come to our seminar. Al was not able, and then we managed to get Peter Van Wagen.
Oh,
He
that's cool.
wasn't. Yeah, so we met there again, and then after that we met at conferences. One time at a philosophy conference, he insisted that I would sit with him, his wife, and other big names to eat dinner together. I tried to avoid to give them time. I mean, okay, so from my book, you have seen that I correspond with all kinds of philosophers. I respect them. I know how smart they are, but I just relate to them at human level. I just perfectly fine. But I want also to be considerate. I want to give other philosophers
Yeah.
who might be looking for an opportunity to talk about their work. So
Yeah.
I try to avoid taking their time, but he insisted I should sit and eat, and I did. And uh, uh, David Lewis's wife was with us
Hmm.
for dinner.
Wow.
Yeah, Steffi was with
Is
us for
she a
dinner.
philosopher?
This is a good question. I don't think she was a philosopher, an academically trained philosopher, but I think she did some work in philosophy. I don't
Hmm.
think she was a philosophy professor, but of course she was David Lewis's wife,
So
and she was with.
gotcha.
I mean, I think David Lewis and Peter Van Wager, they respected each other a lot, and
Yeah.
they had dinner together, and then I was there, just eating the dinner and just talking a little bit with Peter Van Wager's wife and with Peter a little bit. He is the first person who said in an email, said when I said Professor Van Wagen, said, "Call me Peter."
Hmm.
I mean, just imagine Professor Van Wagen like that to a
Yeah.
stranger from Ethiopia. He just said, "Call me Peter."
Let's I'm going to step back a second and kind of summarize the whole thing here really quick because
Mhm.
people might not know the significance of this. Well, so Tedla grows up in Ethiopia, and I didn't know that you were a Marxist Leninist. I actually didn't know that. Was that in the book? I didn't see that in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
book.
that was in the book. Initially, when I was growing up,
Must have been
Ethiopia
very
was
quick.
a Marxist socialist country. Yeah,
Okay, so
socialist.
yeah, the country, but I didn't know you
I
yourself
was,
was a Marxist. Okay.
yeah, a juvenile Marxist.
Okay. So you're a Marxist Leninist and an atheist, and
Mhm,
then you become a Christian.
mhm.
And I mean, you're like full on Orthodox Christian, right? There's no major doctrine you disagree with.
I'm totally, yeah. Even you can call me a
When
serious evangelical
there's no
Christian. Yeah.
heresy. So in
No
other
heresy,
words,
as far as I can
all
tell.
the historical heresies, none of them are in Tedla.
Yeah,
This
no, no,
this
no.
is this is from my view, I'm thinking, how do I explain this? How do I explain this belief formation? That's because I know the challenges at every step of the way. Well, Tedla, for some reason, I don't know if it's just his, I don't know how to explain you, but you take this for example.
Yeah.
You pick up a pen. I don't know how you found the address. You found the address with no World Wide Web, no internet.
No, yeah, no.
You found, so it's not like in the Addis Ababa. I'm sorry, I'm saying the
Addis
name
Ababa.
of the
Yeah,
town right.
correct. That's correct.
Sorry,
Addis Ababa.
wrong.
Huh?
Addis
That's correct.
Ababa. It's not like you go there and there's a phone book and it says Notre Dame Philosophy Department.
No, no,
Here's the
no.
address. You're struggling with English. You take the pen and you write rock stars of American philosophy. I mean, it's like the Bono
Yeah,
from
for
U2.
philosophy.
It's the David, or that's not his real name. His fake name is Edge.
Mhm.
You're writing these people and asking for help with learning philosophy, and they send you their books and they send you articles that you couldn't get otherwise. They're sending you money.
Yeah.
and William Alston in Syracuse for many years. I'm actually friends with one of Bill Alston's star students.
Who
Um,
was that?
I serve with him at church.
Oh,
His
really?
name is Greg Gansel.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
We're on the church facilities committee together.
Really?
Yeah.
Please say hi for me.
Yeah. He was Bill Alston's student. And I
Yeah.
know anything I know about Alston, I know from him.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't really know how Plantinga and Alston, how they differ. Do they differ in any way?
Yeah, they do. When it
Okay.
comes to epistemology, yeah, they do.
Okay. Well,
But
these are
yeah,
huge names.
so
Yeah.
Reformed epistemology is an umbrella, but Bill Alston is not from a Reformed tradition.
Hmm.
But there is this externalism, reliabilism part. That's where they come together.
Okay.
And then also this issue about justification, of course, warrant is for Plantinga, and for Bill Olson, it was like speaking in terms of justification. And those issues, externalism, reliabilism, those are the main things. And about the rationality of religious beliefs, especially.
They're both foundationalists, though, right?
Foundationalists, yeah, those
Yeah.
things
So
exactly,
they
yeah.
got that right.
Yeah, yeah. And then
That's a big thing to get right,
Nick
too.
Wolterstorff and Plantinga, they are
Yeah.
actually formal, yeah, people, yeah.
There's so many moving parts in this interview
Yeah,
here.
it's
There's
very hard
so
at times.
many moving parts
Yeah,
because
I don't know why Bill Olson,
you got the
yeah,
technical distinctions, and then you've got the cultural issues. The cultural issue is that I'm trying to get across is that Tedla, the average American would not do this because
that's
of culture.
exactly right.
Yes,
Yes,
because of culture. Because,
yeah,
well, actually, the average Ethiopian wouldn't do this either. So,
probably, yes. But average Americans, that one is correct. Here is
yeah,
Lucas, a reminder.
I would have
So
been too scared.
when I was at Biola, Alex Plato, our friends, of course, Jonathan and our close friends, when they saw books signed by Plantinga and Alston and those guys, since you guys are Americans, you have the celebrity culture, famous
Yeah,
people, whatever.
right.
I had
That's
no
right.
view about that. Yeah, I had no
Mhm.
idea.
Yeah, that would
I
have been
mean,
like having Springsteen's Born in the USA with his signature on it.
yeah. So for me, it was like a philosopher sent me a book, his book. That's it.
Yeah.
This person is very famous. Yes, I came to learn that later on. Initially, I
Mm,
didn't know, but
okay.
it didn't matter anyway. Even if I knew, I needed some books. I had to beg.
Yes.
And then
Right.
if this person is willing, I just would get the books and read. That was what I was interested in. And later, my friends, they would
Right.
say, well, what if we auction or sell these books and make some money? That was
Did you keep all those books with the signatures?
a very sad thing is
Oh,
most of
don't
them
tell
are
me.
not with me. They are gone. There was a friend of mine in California. I left my a lot of books in California, and I was traveling, and I didn't get a chance to collect them. Then I asked him, "Hey, when am I going to get my books?" And I keep asking and I keep asking. One day, my friend he said, they are not there." What happened?
Mm.
Flood, basement flood, not like an
Oh,
actual flood, but there was pipe or whatever, and there was a flood in the basement, and then he lost everything there. I said, "Okay, but still,
oh my
some books I
gosh.
have some of them."
I would have
I
been
will
so
show you. I want to show
traumatized.
you. I want to show you one.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, that kills me.
Okay, now I have this copy logic from Plantinga. It's actual copy. I mean,
Wow.
he didn't write this one, but
That's a book I
uh,
used for teaching logic.
uh-huh. So this is an actual. Here is Alvin Plantinga's signature.
Uh,
Can you see?
God bless. Yeah, yeah. See, Tedla,
That's
is
it.
that's in
That
your
is
handwriting down below?
July 7th, 1997.
Is that all in his handwriting?
No, this is my writing.
Okay,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
it.
I see.
But this one is his name, his actual
Gotcha.
signature.
Gotcha.
So, okay, when I donated my books to the Ethiopian Graduate School of Theology, the ones
Hmm.
that I left back home,
Hmm.
I had to ask a friend because I lost my books. I had to ask my friend, send me at least this book, at least to have a book now signed by Planting. I have others, a few other books by him.
Do you have any that are signed by Alston?
Unfortunately, I never kept any letters. Like, here is one
Oh, you
big
don't
letter.
have the letters? Oh
No,
man.
nothing. I have letters,
Okay.
emails, of course. Emails are still there, some of them. But here is the problem. Since I don't
You want to
have
print
this,
those out. You want to print those out and put them in an archive for historians later, just in case there's any issues.
so
Seriously.
here is the
I'll
thing.
help you do that at some point.
Okay, so here is the thing. Since I did not have this mindset about how valuable those correspondences with those people
It's
were and
huge.
are,
Yeah.
I just didn't keep anything. I just moved away. I just moved from
Yeah.
one place to
It would
another,
be a
and I
lot
don't.
to carry. It would be a lot to have with you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, at least I could do. I could keep the letters. But when Peter Van Wagen complimented me on my English in 1998, I showed, oh, here is the letter from Peter Van Wagen. He said, I don't remember what happened to the letters.
Uh,
I mean, I didn't
yeah.
have that. Yeah, I don't have any
That
habits. I
most
don't have
people don't
any
have
habits.
that. Most people don't have that way of looking at the world. Like
Yeah,
I
and there is one more thing. Whatever I have written in schools all my life, unless I have some of them in my emails, I don't keep anything.
yeah.
I never cared. I don't know what that reason is. I just don't keep anything.
Well, that doesn't surprise me given your
So that's like,
your view about grades.
yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. That's why
That's a
probably I
huge
never cared about lecture. I don't usually take lecture notes anyway.
yeah.
I just
Doesn't
watch and I
surprise me.
listen, and then I go to the library and read. Remember, we go to the library all the time
Like Josh
at college.
Rasmussen. Sitting next to Josh Rasmussen in class,
Mhm.
he would just sit there and stare at the professor.
Yeah,
He
I,
never took any notes.
yeah, I'm,
I took so many notes.
yeah, I don't know how to take notes. I mean, I prefer to listen. And if I was given a chance in my life, I would never go to any class anywhere in the world.
Hmm. Yeah,
Anywhere,
that doesn't
except I mean,
surprise me.
sometimes I would go to public lectures
Yeah,
and sometimes to topics if the topics interest me, to my own professors, wonderful professors I loved. If I was
right.
free not to attend, I would just attend very few classes.
Yes. Well, that's very ancient way of doing philosophy because philosophy was done in conversation. It
Yeah,
was very Socratic. The way you did
yes,
it was very classical. It's very normal in the ancient world to do it the way you did it because and you know, it's about the personal encounter.
yeah,
The personal encounter with the question in the dialogue and that well, that's why I think the evidence of those letters is so tragic. I'm sorry, I don't want to make you sad,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
I
know
know,
it
I
probably
understand.
won't make you sad, but
Yeah, yeah.
one of my PhD research tools was archival methods, and so
Oh,
I
okay,
had to take.
okay.
My professor was a historian, and she was a
Mm-hmm,
professional archivist. And
mm-hmm,
one of the things we had to do was go to the Claremont College Library, which is a huge library, special collections room, which is a huge room,
mm-hmm.
and it's you know it's at least 2 stories high,
Okay,
and it has these special collection and most people don't know what is going to be valuable for future
yeah,
generations and they
yeah,
don't think about it. They
yeah,
That's just human nature. We don't think about stuff like that.
yeah.
But historians think about that kind of stuff. They think that
Yes.
will be something worth keeping later. And when you process a collection like I did, I processed a collection for their archives. You go through and you sift through and you try to figure out what to put in which folder and how to describe it for future generations, because people have limited time, and how will they know what's in there if you don't describe what it is accurately?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's hard to do. It's actually very difficult to do.
yeah. So
So
I want to show you this. This is
which
in my
book is
book
that? Which is
from
what?
Quentin Smith, the book I showed you
Oh
earlier.
yeah, yeah.
So it's good to read this for our
Oh,
viewers. Since
that's
we're talking
great.
about signature, things like that,
Yeah.
this is an actual signature by Quentin Smith.
I'm glad. Did you have to ask him to do that, or did he just do that?
He did that. He just did it. I didn't ask
Good.
him. I mean, I was hanging out with him all the time, and then
Yeah.
when I was at his house helping him, and I had a student a stipend, thing like that. My
Uh-huh.
scholarship was covered, and then I had my friend Jason, my roommate. He was working for Quentin. He was paid,
Hmm.
and then when I was there to help Quentin, I told him, of course, he didn't have to write a check for me because I have scholarship from school. So we said, okay, I want just to get an extra copy from your books if you have extra copies. Yeah, he has a lot of them. Yeah, he just this one of them he wrote
That's great.
saying, for Tedla, a philosopher by his metaphysically necessary individual essence, the philosopher language, thus you are doomed like the rest of us. Condolences, Quentin Smith, Quentin, I say, just Quentin, 4407.
That's awesome.
That just
See,
Quentin.
that's great.
That is the kind of signature and books. This one is from here, so I have it. Not lost in
Well,
blood or something.
now, if you are influential for the rest of your life
Mm,
and you die,
mhm,
and someone is going to write a PhD on Tedla Woldeyohannes, the great
mm.
philosopher from, remember he wrote the book Philosopher's Testimony about the God who calls. Remember it sold 7 million copies. Remember that? And
Seven
so
700 maybe
he
or
grew up
770.
poor. He grew up poor. He was a Marxist. Then he checked all the boxes for historic Christianity, and he got a PhD. And well, those letters would be the riches of Babylon for writing a dissertation like that. And so that's all I was saying
Yeah,
is
yeah.
people,
By the
you
way,
don't think that way, and I don't think that people
I never think
typically
like
don't
that
think that
way. I
way.
don't think I will ever
But
be popular
later,
anyway. I
but
don't.
if you did,
Mhm.
later the historians would be saying, "Thank you, Tedla, for preserving these for
Yeah,
us." So
but I never take myself seriously as an important person
I
anyway.
know.
So that would never cross my mind. And but one thing I did was writing this book. At least I gave a chance for people to see.
That's right,
Yeah, at least I did something.
because it's based on your memory, and yeah,
Exactly.
that's
And
good.
look at just to for the viewers as well. Someone there was a book launch for this book, Ethiopian community in DC area, Silver Spring. So a friend was wondering how I kept how I remembered all this.
Right.
Uh, Initially, part of this book was written when I was at Biola, like the
Oh,
first part. And at
okay.
that moment, I mean, you are one of my friends. I would talk about my life. You guys ask me questions. I talk. It was like fresh in my mind.
Hmm.
I was talking about like almost every other day, and I was in the States at that time only for like the first 2 years of my life here.
Right.
Everything was fresh, right?
Yes.
So that's what I wrote then, and then
Oh,
you see how that's how I kept it. If I had
that's
no
me.
conversations with you guys,
Yes.
like fresh conversations, like with many people, I would
Yeah,
repeat the same stories, right? When I did that, that was like fresh memory. And then I
that's
wrote
right.
that, especially the Ethiopian part, the older
Right.
part. And the rest, of course, is of course my life here. This one is like almost current.
Yes.
You see, you get the
That's
idea. So
helpful.
that's
That's
how,
helpful
yeah,
for me to know. Yeah.
exactly. So
It's
that's how I kept it.
yeah.
If I didn't get a chance to talk about my past when I was at Biola, and if I decided to pick up to write this book right here, most
Hmm.
of that I don't think I will remember, like correctly the way I remember at that time, like 15 years ago. That's made a difference, I think.
That does help.
Yeah.
I see that I am referred to one time in the book.
Yes.
I'm not mentioned by name, but I am referred to. So
Yeah. And did you discover that?
I did. Page
Yeah, I gave you
197
an
at the
assignment.
bottom.
It was like an
190,
assignment. What page?
197. The UC
197. I gave
Riverside
you.
trip. We
Yeah,
went
that
up to
was
UC
my.
Riverside to John
That
Martin
was,
Fisher. Yeah.
yeah, that was my assignment for you. You discovered it.
That was hilarious. And
Yes.
the whole she thing, I remember that very well. So
Yeah.
I remember going there.
You gave me a ride.
I gave, yeah, of course. Yeah. We
Of course,
drove
I
up
didn't drive
together.
there. Yeah.
We drove up together and there's another part of the story that didn't make it into the book, but
Yeah.
the part of the story that I remember was that we went to get hamburgers and
Yes.
you said to me that you loved hamburgers. I mean,
Correct.
it was so passionate. You were like, I love
Hmm.
hamburgers.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that kind of passion for hamburgers before, ever in my life. And I realized I love hamburgers too. Yeah, and I should be passionate about it. That's right. And then I remember we got hamburgers. I think you got two.
Did
And I
you
remember
take me
thinking,
to?
yeah, well get two, of course. I mean,
What did you
the
take me? Do you
hamburgers are
remember?
awesome.
What
What's
did you
that?
take me? Do you remember what you took me? Is it In and Out, maybe somewhere else? I don't know what you took me.
I don't remember. I
I
don't think it
remember.
was I don't think it was In and Out. I think it
I
was
love
just a
that.
local hamburger place.
Okay, I love that In and Out so much. So I was thinking
Yes.
maybe was it there? I don't know. I don't remember where it was.
Well, I think I remember the hamburger, to be honest with you. I think I remember it was a substantial patty. Like In and Out
Hmm.
does not have it. It was,
Oh,
where
okay,
the
okay,
beef
okay.
is, big and I think it was must have been a local place, a
Hmm.
local pop mom and pop kind of a shop.
Yeah, there was
But
also
yes,
something I did not include about John Martin Fisher in our discussion about GRE. Remember?
Jerry.
GRE, the
Oh,
exam.
GREs. Yeah,
Yeah, was
I was
that when
very
we were together, or did I
I
talk
was
about
stressed
that
out about it.
before? Yeah, I
I
think maybe,
I at that moment I was very stressed about the GREs. Yes, that's true.
maybe we talked about that. He told that about his story about Cornell and things like that. I
That's
didn't include
probably
that
right.
part. Yeah, I didn't include that part. No, there are so many things to include, but I had
Well, you have
to
a
say
good memory.
I
Yeah, there's
remember
a
that
lot.
because that was important.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You and me were on the same GRE issue. We were both
Yeah, and
stressed
John
about it.
Martin Fisher, that brilliant philosopher, telling us, yeah, it is now okay.
It was Gary something.
Yeah,
Gary, what's his last
Watson.
name?
Yeah, yeah,
Watson.
very
Yeah,
good.
of course,
Yeah,
Gary Watson. Yeah, they're both big free will guys.
yeah,
And they
very,
were
very good.
there and they were talking and they were like, yeah, Tedla's going to come. She this and she that. They were talking about you and you were right there.
Yeah,
And I was like, this is Tedla right here. they were they were like, wait, hold on, not a woman.
yeah,
So that
mhm,
was funny. I'm glad that made
yeah,
it into the book.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was an interesting story.
You said that you mentioned Eleanor Stump several times, and
Yeah,
you had several classes with her. What
yeah,
was it like to work with her? She's a famous philosopher at St. Louis University, medieval philosophy religion.
yeah, yeah. She is incredibly good, an excellent philosopher, and more than anything, she is an excellent, really, really a good person.
Hmm.
It's very hard to describe how good she is. And I said this to her. I don't think I said that in my book, but I did say in an email to her. I think I want to call you Saint Eleanor Sam.
I've
She
heard
is
good things about her.
exceptionally good, very kind, very understanding, encyclopedic knowledge about medieval philosophy and, of course,
Yeah.
contemporary philosophy of religion.
Yep.
Her comments were detailed, very helpful. Nothing is mean, everything constructive.
Hmm.
Some philosopher you can't just stop appreciating.
Yeah.
Very, very, very kind person, very wise person, wisdom incredible,
Now
very wise person.
I notice you didn't talk much about John Greco, but
Uh-huh.
he was a major figure too. You took five
Yeah,
classes from him, and he was your
yeah,
supervisor.
he was. Yeah,
Um, so you guys worked adequately together, but did
yeah,
you obviously didn't see eye to eye on epistemology or philosophy of
yeah.
religion?
I mean, John Greco. is also another really
He's
kind and
famous.
very understanding person.
I would say he's pretty famous, right? As an
He is, he
epistemologist.
is, he
Yeah, yeah.
is. He's a very excellent epistemologist. He
Mhm.
never, ever, even once tried to influence me in any way. Not
He
only
did.
me, I mean,
He didn't get you
never.
to try to drink
No, no,
Michelob or
bro. He
anything like that.
just he argues for his own views, and he just is open to anyone arguing against his views. Always. So when I wrote my dissertation as an evidentialist, all that stuff, and he never tried to show that my view is really bad because evidentialism, internalism, or whatever. He's perfectly fine. He wants me to say my view was adequately developed and well formulated. He made sure that was fine. That's it. And then one thing that I mentioned in my book as well. He knew I would work independently,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
right.
how I.
That was a compliment for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something so strange for people to hear.
Right.
With the two of us, at times we would meet like once in a semester. He just let me just do things. Yeah,
He must have been pretty confident in you then.
he was. I was going to say that he was so confident, and he knew I was working on Paul Model stuff, the EPS, Evangelical Philosophical Society
Right.
online symposium. I was busy with that, and he would, of course, ask me now how that project was going. He knew I was very much involved. So he
Mhm.
wanted me to use my time to develop some of my views there. And he knew some of those views would make their ways into my dissertation.
Right.
So he gave me all that freedom, and then making sure how many years I was working with him and I was just
Yeah.
meeting the deadlines. And
Yeah.
he wanted to make sure I was meeting the deadline.
Good.
Between that, I was free.
That's great.
Yeah, and his comments, one thing, when he comments, incredibly penetrating,
Hmm.
so scary.
Scary.
And yes, his questions. If you go to conferences to see how he formulates questions, you have no idea how he thinks about those questions right there, and how he formulates them clearly and in a penetrating way.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I was planning to work with Professor Stamp, and my dissertation was going in the direction of religious epistemology. So
Yeah.
he was, of course, the epistemology guy there. And then he's the one who initiated the conversation. I took 5 seminars from him, and he knew what I was doing. And he said, "Yeah, I mean, I know we have been following what you are working on. And then when are you going to do your prospectus, proposal?" And then I was about to ask him, and
Hmm.
he would stay in a hotel near where I had an apartment, and we would both take a shuttle to go to Oslo, like a couple of miles, and then we would see each other on a shuttle many times. And the one of those days said, "Oh, so you are almost done with your coursework. So what's going on?" And I already had my dissertation uh, topic when I was finishing my first year and starting my second year. I already had my view.
Hmm.
And I already talked to Duncan Pritchard, Duncan Pritchard, the epistemology guy.
I
And I
don't
know,
know him personally, but I've heard of
yeah,
him.
yeah, I know him personally, and he's a great guy. So I talked to him, I talked to other philosophers about what do you think? What do you think before I started to jump into the project. He said,
Yeah.
"God, this is something not explored." And then I was planning to do it, and then I talked to John Greco, and I asked him formally in an email. I didn't want to say, "Oh, I'm going to ask you whatever." No, I did that, and of course, he said, "Yeah, go ahead, and then we can work together." And he gave me ultimate freedom, what I needed to do philosophy the way I have always been doing.
Ted,
Incredibly good. Yeah.
Tedla, can I ask you, have you ever been at these parties or philosophy areas where you did you feel like you were, do you drink alcohol? I don't even know.
Not now, but I did. I stopped
Okay.
drinking just for some health issues, whatever. I did
Okay.
for
Do
beer
you have
when I was
cigars?
socializing. Yeah,
Do you ever
socializing
have
with friends.
cigars?
What?
Do you ever have cigars?
No, I have
Okay.
friends. Of course, you know them.
Okay.
I
So you
did.
never
I
felt
did
like you
smoke.
had to, you were never pressured to kind of do these hobnob kind of things where you have to network. And so Stump never said, "Hey, you want to have a cigar?" And you're never in a position where you're like,
No, no,
I
no.
don't
I
have
mean,
cigars.
I have friends who did have this cigar business. I don't know, but I have never tried it. But I did smoke cigarettes when I was younger, and I
Oh,
stopped
okay.
doing that. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, I mean, I would socialize. I did socialize with, at conferences. Now, drinking beer, that was like normal.
Right.
And, okay, here's one thing. So for Ethiopians, evangelical Ethiopians, drinking any alcohol is abomination. It's just for most of them. They cannot even comprehend you are still a believer if you drink any alcohol at all.
For which, for who now?
Ethiopians from my country. And then,
Ethiopia.
yeah,
Gotcha.
of course, I did drink for socializing, whatever, and I stopped drinking, but nothing to do with, because Ethiopian evangelicals approve it or disapprove it. But that's something I just want to say. In America, what people say, it's totally fine. In Ethiopian culture, completely different. But I'm not saying
Gotcha.
everyone, but there's some just a commentary about
Okay.
alcohol and evangelicals.
Interesting cultural tip there.
Differences, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I want to talk a little bit. We don't have to go too much into it about theological education and the challenges of philosophy with theological education. I
Hmm.
think I know what you're talking about. You did say over and over again, so no
Yeah.
one can accuse you of being unclear about this at all because you said
Thank
it
you. Thank you.
several
Thank you.
times.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yes. You were very clear to express your warm memories of Biola University in Southern California as a wonderful place to study. Many compliments.
Yeah,
You did mention that there is in our heritage, the Biola type heritage,
yeah,
where broadly speaking, there's Gordon Clark and there's
yeah,
it's a big tent. E.J. Carnell, you mentioned he's a
yeah,
big
yeah.
name for me. I love Carnell. Did you
Yeah.
ever read Gordon Lewis? Gordon Lewis on
Yes, I read the one he wrote on the Holy Spirit or something. Something to do with the Holy
well,
Spirit.
Gordon
Gordon?
Lewis,
No,
Gordon
no.
Lewis wrote
Gordon Fee. Gordon Fee, maybe another
Gordon
person.
Fee. Oh yeah, he's a
Maybe,
Holy
maybe.
Spirit guy.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Gordon
yeah.
Lewis.
Gordon
And
Lewis wrote about Gordon Clark. So I first heard about
yes,
Gordon Clark and
okay. Mention one book, something to do with apologetics. Do you remember
testing
the name?
Christianity's truth claims.
Yes, I read that one.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Well, he was my mentor in high school.
High school?
When I was in high school, Gordon Lewis was my mentor.
And when
Yeah,
you were in high school, he taught at Denver Seminary, and you are
that's
from
right.
Littleton. You are
Well,
from Littleton, right?
he went
Yeah.
to the neighborhood church. There was a Baptist church that
Okay.
was 2 blocks away from where I grew up, and I had a friend, my best friend for a while was at going to that church. He knew Gordon, and we
Okay.
brought our hardest questions to him. And so I was introduced to Gordon Clark, Cornelius
In
Van
high school.
Til, J. Oliver Buswell,
Yeah.
Carnell, all the big names. And I that's why I started developing my library. Well,
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So these names. What was I going to ask you?
Yeah. About
Uh,
theological education and my, yeah,
Yeah,
my
so
presentation.
theological education, the issue, of course, Gordon Lewis taught philosophy and he taught theology. So there
Yes.
was
At
not
Denver
that
Seminary.
issue at Denver Seminary as
Yeah.
much. My biblical training was at Denver Seminary, and then I
Yes.
transferred that stuff to Talbot and
Okay.
Biola.
Hmm.
So I didn't have to take as much there because I had a course
Okay.
reduction. So I didn't have the same issue, but I heard about it from other people, and I just know generally speaking that the way that things are designed,
Yeah.
you even mentioned it back in Ethiopia. There's a statistics guy that you were going back and forth about the philosophy of statistics, and that was hard for you as a
Yeah.
sociology major.
Hmm.
uh, it seems like it's not just theology, it's also other disciplines have a
Yes.
hard time taking seriously or making time for the philosophical, or maybe they just feel like they can't handle it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah. So I had a phone conversation with someone from back home today before I start the conversation here with you.
Hmm.
And he is reading my book,
Hmm.
someone, a close friend of mine. And he was also mentioning that my chapter on my theological education and my frustrations and pains. Okay.
Yeah.
So I also asked him, he was saying maybe were you harsh about, what happened, what I said. I tried to make sure my professors, I was not targeting my professors.
Yes,
And
that's
I
right.
will just to mention, I can just mention this to you right now. I think 2 days ago, probably Scott Ray, our Scott Ray and
Yeah.
Sean McDowell, I
Mhm.
think if I say that name correct, they had Eric
I
Tonis,
think his first name is pronounced Scene.
Same
Scene McDonald.
McDowell, same,
I'm
okay.
kidding. That was a joke. I'm sorry. I
Is that Sean?
apologize. All the Americans are laughing, but it's actually pronounced Sean, and
Sean, yeah, that's what I said.
It's an Irish spelling. Yes. Okay.
Sean is, I think, the right one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
so
apologize.
I don't know, no problem. So here is Eric Tonis, the New Testament
Yeah.
professor.
Sure. Yeah. He's a great preacher.
They interviewed him, and I was just watching that interview, and I was thinking about how much I loved him, especially the way he preached when we
Mm.
were at Grace AB Free Church.
I
I
You didn't
remember,
mention the name of the church. You did not mention the name of the church, but I knew which church you were talking about
oh, I
based on your description.
loved it. That's what the church I
Yeah.
was. And if I ever visit California,
Mm-hmm.
that's the church I would visit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hardcore evangelical anyway, just to remind you. I am.
Yeah.
I had
I
my
can tell.
conversation with Alex Plato. I told him I will die an evangelical.
Did he try
I
to
will
get you to become Catholic?
I mean, we had conversations all the time, but they said, "Don't worry, I will never convert." Anyway, so I'm just talking about my Biola
Mm,
professors, and
right.
I had no issues with them, but I was just making a commentary. So, having lived in America now for a while, 19 years, by the way, now,
Oh,
long time, and then now I'm in a Christian school teaching students. Some are going to like into youth ministry or all this stuff. So I remember how I of course there was a bias on my side. I cannot hide. I was so much obsessed with philosophy. I wanted all courses to be in philosophy stuff, and then of course we had to do also theology. And doing theology is not a problem, but I was not sure whether the theology courses would prepare people,
right.
those who are getting training for the world that's outside of the classroom. That was my concern. And then
Yes.
just think about any topic that comes that's important for Christianity or Christian
Right.
doctrines. Think about Genesis and the creation story, and
Hmm.
younger, older, theistic,
Right.
all this stuff. How much of that and the philosophy of science and how science and theology interact, how much of that are students getting like solid training, all the philosophical assumptions there, all those things that could benefit, because anyone who gets a training as like say for Master of Divinity and goes into ministry is going to do ministry with people. Some of them they are just fed up with religion or
Right.
all this politics,
Right.
religion, all this stuff, and they have questions about science and religion, philosophical questions. Are people getting that training? That's like I'm not trying to convert every department into philosophy. No, that's not my point. But I have this frustration. There were a number of philosophical questions, assumptions that never even get any
Right.
attention.
Yeah.
I don't want, I'm not suggesting those theologians start now become philosophers. No, they need to teach theology. That's perfectly fine.
Hmm.
And then there's some weird things Christians believe. So, say for example
Sure.
about rapture. So I just mentioned that in my book. So how do you make sense of that? So
Right.
what's rapture? What about space and time? What about the human nature, physical human
Humans
nature,
and
and all this?
angels and demons. Yeah.
Yeah, so all that stuff. I
Sure.
mean, we can try to get a handle on that, thinking about the nature of space, the nature of physical bodies, and what is
Right.
essential for humans, how to understand it. So there are a number of things philosophers can weigh in and maybe
Even
help.
the ascension
Yeah,
of Jesus. How do you
exactly. And then
understand that?
where
Did
do
he
we
go up
go?
into space? Where'd he go?
Yeah, and about post-mortem status and what is happening. Are we conscious about our life? When people die, especially this very common among evangelicals, people say, oh, okay, so see you later, kind of. So what does it mean? Just think
Yes.
about all those issues
Right.
about the post-mortem status, one, and
Hmm.
then how can human beings, if the soul can be conscious whether we
Right.
can tell that's you, that this is me.
Right.
Those issues are really good philosophical topics.
Yes.
I want theologians and philosophers teach, co-teach, or do write papers together, so that those who are getting training in theology, those of us who got
Yeah.
training in philosophy, we can still continue this.
Yes.
But I want theologians who will just stay teaching theology, doing ministry. I want them to wrestle with them so that when younger people come and ask questions, like crazy questions, metaphysics is so crazy, full of crazy
Yes.
ideas. I want them
That's
to
right.
be cute. Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff I was thinking. We need more broader education that takes into account the really good stuff Christian philosophers work on. Like there are like so many topics. So that's the
Yeah.
kind of idea that I was trying to communicate.
Yeah. I think I'm going to just throw a couple ideas out there. I think one hurdle to that is that it's an anxiety about time
Yeah,
and time management, and you have 15 weeks, 16 weeks maybe with spring break. You've got, in the fall you have uh Thanksgiving, which gets in the way and takes a week off usually. So
yeah,
you have these issues of how do we cover all this, and it's an anxiety of, can I do a competent job of it and rein it in so that the students don't nail me on the evaluations
yeah, yeah,
of, you spent too much time on this that's not even on the syllabus, that's not even what the class is.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a systemic design issue with the academic calendar year. So
yeah,
much of what you do is so pure. This
yeah,
whole story
mhm,
is really about the purity. I would say it's the purity of philosophy
mhm,
in its essence. It's a
mhm,
very pure, relatively simple thing of
yeah,
wondering and then systematically, eh, with
yeah,
discipline, pursuing relentlessly those questions. What we try to do in an academic context, so that there's accreditation and all this stuff, and so people can feel really good about their grade and that it counts for something, is that you try to scrunch that and make it fit into a time management kind of a thing, and have supervisors that approve everything, whether it's a dean or a provost,
mhm,
and then ultimately the board is responsible. But also the way it's designed is it's public opinion. The
mhm.
students are
Your mic,
voting by
yeah, your mic is
evaluating you.
breaking up. Mhm,
Okay. Can you hear me?
mhm,
Did you hear what I said about the
mhm.
students
Yeah,
evaluating? That's like a
yeah,
it's a
yeah. No,
very
I can
it's a
hear you. There
popular
is small, yeah, some breaking up. Mhm.
it's a
Yeah,
popularity contest.
yeah,
So uh and
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
pureness
But we
about,
lose a lot because of that.
yes, I agree.
Yeah,
So I'm not
yeah.
sure how much that kind of goes into this, but
Your mic is working, or is it? Mhm.
can you hear me?
Yes. So if I want to comment a little bit on this, yeah, I can hear you. Yes. So there was
Okay.
some breaking up. So I also mentioned in my book philosophers who write academic philosophy. Most of the time they write very technical stuff that's not accessible to. That's also one problem. But there are some books written by philosophers that are accessible. I just mentioned, recommended a few of them. By
Hmm.
the way, here is one example. There is someone I knew personally. Of course, he was at Biola. He did a PhD at Biola in clinical psychology at Rosemead School of Psychology.
Hmm.
After reading my book, he purchased Moreland's and Craig's book, and he's reading it now.
Wow.
Just this is just after reading my book. He's just trying to get some philosophy. Yeah.
Oh,
So I am hoping that people will get some benefit of reading philosophy. Yes, accessible books, if we recommend for people, that can help. And also, it's good to expose theology students to philosophical topics and see if they want to pursue them further. If they want to pursue them further, recommend books. Or some of them, they can take classes maybe from at Biola, they can take classes from maybe philosophy department. So
Yeah.
that we can train people, we can equip people. I'm not thinking about apologetics. I'm thinking about, of course, understanding the Christian faith in a very, nuanced way, so
Yes.
that they can have better knowledge about the Christianity and also they can serve others. Yeah, that's the intention that I have,
That makes sense.
the motivation for
I
my
think
writing.
that that's easily doable.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, you have such a pure
yeah,
understanding, I think. Like you're a pure philosopher. I mean, you're living poor. You're like
I am.
Socrates. You're Socrates. Um, you had a chapter about being an Uber driver and you had some
Yeah,
chapters about being an adjunct professor. Um,
yeah,
I was an adjunct professor for 15 years.
uh-huh.
Very difficult, very
Yeah, very,
difficult,
very difficult.
very
Very
difficult.
difficult.
Did you want to
Yeah.
share any difficult stories that you had that maybe didn't make it into the book?
Yeah. So yeah, teaching as an adjunct, especially when teaching as an adjunct, involves driving from one school to another when the schools are really far from each other. That is really time consuming. And as someone who wants to reviews, especially someone who loves philosophy, who wants to read, to write, there's no time to do this. And there's no time to do this. And this a natural desire to learn, to write, to read more, what's current, what's new, and not being able to do that, that is really deeply damaging to how a person, could develop. So that is really bad. So that's one frustration I had, because I had to drive to a lot of schools, one in one place, maybe
What's the furthest you ever drove? Which schools
an
did you
hour
teach at?
away, another class, and then come back home. Okay, so there was one school, now Josh Heater is teaching at one community college. He's now full-time. He's some maybe 37 miles from St. Louis University area. I taught there one class, for example, and then I had another class in Illinois, Belleville, I think, Illinois. That was another 40 miles or 30 miles. Then I had to drive from one school and another direction to Illinois the same day and drive back to my apartment. That just takes a lot of time. And I enjoy teaching, and there's nothing that I enjoy in my life more than teaching, of course. That was very difficult. No time to sit down and read. And you know how much I really want to read and then how much I want to interact, no time. And publishing, I'm not like the kind of person who has this desire, craving to publish unless I publish. No, I will publish whenever I see, yeah, there is something I think is valuable, and when I have time, I will do it. I don't have any agenda to impress anyone. I never do anything like that. So I will only publish when I see a need. If there is this, for the example I mentioned earlier about burden of proof and Quentin Smith and how one part of philosophy is neglected and not good to pursue truth. I want to address that one because I don't see that a lot in the literature. When I see a need, I will write. I want to write to turn my dissertation into a book because I haven't seen
Yeah,
anyone still engaging. So those are kind of things I want to write, but I had no time to do those. I will
right,
do at some point whenever I have time. And Uber driving was, of course, completely so strange. I have never done anything that's non-academic.
right.
It took me like a lot of process thinking, how am I supposed to do something that is non-academic? And because I had to do something to support my family.
Yeah.
And I would do anything, of course, legal and morally okay to support my family. But doing something that is non-academic, I had a hard time conceiving myself doing it. And I had to do it. And then, of course,
You,
I had to stop it when the pandemic came,
yeah.
and I had to stop it. And then, of course, I moved here. But that was very tough. I mean, there's some sense of I'm a conversational person. I'm a people kind of person. I
That's
enjoy
right.
talking to people, strangers. Honestly, I even I if I didn't have to do Uber, if I would just if I want to do just to connect with people, I would just go and drive and talk to people. That in that
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
if it was something I just wanted to do it,
Sure.
it's not like a big deal because I want to engage people. But I didn't choose to do it. I was
Right.
forced to do it.
Right.
That
Right.
is the
Right.
difference. And
Okay.
then the way it takes my time and it took my time, that was very, very different. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's good that I had this experience in my life to see what it's like to do something that's non-academic I've never done before.
Right.
And then I learned something about how people struggle in America, doing
Hmm.
2 jobs, three. I
Yeah.
never had that experience. So I start to see this is how hard life is for
Yeah.
many people.
That's right.
And I'm not regretting or saying anything negative, but that also is a perspective I got from doing it. And overall, it gave me some time to reflect on my life. And then fortunately I moved here and I have more time now to read and I hope to publish some on topics that I said I think I want to do some kind of writing.
Uh, Tedla, I've got a couple more questions for you. I hope you're okay on time. Are you okay on time?
Okay,
Okay. Feel free to ignore the
I think I
question, but
am.
okay. Feel free to ignore the question, but because normally at the very beginning I ask, is there anything you
What?
want to avoid? And I know that you already told me, but your family,
Do
you
something
don't
about your
mention.
mic. Your mic is breaking up. Can you do something about it? Yes, maybe your yes, something.
How's it now?
It's good. So if it's not breaking up again, go ahead.
Okay, just tell me if it breaks up.
Okay,
Doing okay?
okay.
All right.
I'll show you. Yeah.
Is your family with you?
Yes.
Okay. You
Yes.
don't
Yes.
mention them
Mhm.
very much in your you very little mention your family. So sometimes when you say your family, I don't know who you mean. Do you mean your mother
Yes.
or do you mean your wife or whatever? But if you don't want to talk about that, you don't have to,
Yes.
but
So
I just wanted to know if you were all together.
no, I will. Yeah, I can. I
Uh,
yeah, I can talk a little bit. So to keep focus on my this intellectual component, the focus of my book is
mhm,
mostly about my intellectual struggle into my own struggles. All those life aspects of my life
mhm.
that is not directly related.
Right.
I'm not saying being a father and being a husband, those things did not have anything to do with my intellectual life. They do, but I just mentioned when I needed to support my family and I did this.
Yeah.
And then I also mentioned somewhere about my wife. She had to pay a price, a huge price, because she had to move to the States to be with me to raise our children together. And then she had to give up her really, really good job back home.
Mm,
And then that also uh, brought a lot of painful experience for us because she was not able to work
mm,
because the visa the visa she had did not allow her to work. Just think about this look, because someone who is competent, who can work, who can make money, who can support family, but there are now we live in a country and we live in a different country and we have to abide by the law, of course. So I am not
right.
against the law. So
Yeah.
in order, when you want to live according to the law, you pay prices, of course. There are people who violate the law and they make money, things like that. But I wanted to
Right.
stick to the law, and then that also was very, very hard in terms of her just staying at home.
Right.
Very, very painful experience. And that is just one story. The rest, I mean, just raising kids, and the rest is my family. I mean, I have sisters back home. Others now, older people, they are no longer alive. And I have friends back home. I communicate with them. So I didn't bring a lot of stories about
Yeah.
family here. It's not like an autobiography. It's only
Right.
more focused on intellectual stuff. So that's why I try to say something like minimum about it.
And that makes sense. And you are the
Yeah,
youngest of your mother's children?
I am.
And how many
Yes,
children
yes.
how many brothers and sisters do you have?
We were all together eight. The one of the eight uh, died before I was born. So, but at least
Okay.
I can say eight of us, and
And
I was the youngest.
you mentioned living with your brother when he died.
Yeah,
That
yeah. No, he
and
no longer. Yeah,
of
yeah,
course that's in the book, and I read that, and
yeah,
I can't imagine how you were feeling at the time. How did you deal with that? Was that pretty traumatic for you?
yeah, yeah. So I tried to manage my grief as a
Mhm.
philosopher.
Yeah.
Of course, I try to think about there are issues. There are issues. I could have written like a full book about my family and my grief.
Um,
I didn't because I was not writing a book on like this all kinds of aspects of my life. But there were issues at some point. If I write more on some personal aspects of my life, I would bring up some really serious issues, painful issues about losing, my brothers, and even when I lost my mom. Of course, she was older, but I was not able to go back home. And the way I can describe about my mom and my love is very different. And if I never became a believer, a Christian, I would say I have seen the best love conceivable in my life from my mom.
mm,
So that's like the best love I can imagine. That's the kind of love I received from my mom.
yeah.
And of course, we had the best relationship. And then, of course, she died when she was about 90 years old. But I would still prefer to be, there, but I was
Yes.
not able to do it. So those things are
Yes.
really, really tough. But there are things that I accept, things that are inevitable, and things that you cannot change, like being stoic to some extent. At times, I just accept facts, deal with them, and if there's nothing you can change about it, just move on. So that's why I didn't say a lot about those issues in my book.
Well, I was interested just from
Yeah,
a psychological
at least they did
perspective.
not distract me. Yeah, they did not distract me from still pursuing what I just cared about.
Yeah.
I said there's nothing I can do about this, so I kept
Right.
moving forward. So in that
Right.
sense, yeah, I kept my pace, and I kept moving forward again
Yeah.
to myself.
Okay. Well, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it if you wanted
Yeah,
to add anything to it. Um, so I appreciate that. Family is very important, and I know that how we experience things emotionally and also how we store that kind of trauma in our body, the kind of nervous
yeah,
system states of fight or flight, and also rest and digest, which is ideal for philosophy. Ideally, you want to be in rest and digest for the nervous system. A fight or
mhm,
flight is not ideal, and also the nervous system state of shutdown or dorsal vagal shutdown or freeze is not ideal either. But it's because
mhm.
you have this philosophical way of looking at everything. You look at it as an invitation to talk about the problem of evil, think about the problem of evil, the problem of pain, and you're very
Mm,
explicit about that in your the suffering. You talked about the
yeah,
stories of being at Biola and wanting to help your mom, being on
yeah,
full scholarship,
yeah,
and choosing not to, how you chose not to work even though you could
mm,
have, but
yeah,
you made
yeah,
promises and you felt called by God and God answered your prayer. So it seems like at every step of the way you
yeah.
felt confident that God was answering your prayers. Did you feel that every step of the way, even through the suffering?
Yeah, I did. I don't think there was any moment when I had any doubt
Okay, I didn't quite
about the
get what you
calling
said.
part.
Hold on one sec. I'm going to
And
pause it real quick. Okay, we're
okay,
back.
so
So, yeah.
we are back. So yes, when it comes to the calling, whether God called me, I don't think I ever had any doubt. But about how things would unfold, of course, that would be, something very hard to tell. But I had always this confidence that God would answer my prayers, at whatever time God chose to. And I was perfectly fine with that.
Mm.
And I never had this desire to figure out what God wants me to do tomorrow or something. I just want to be faithful, and I want to remain faithful and confident that He would answer my prayers regarding the future, what I need at that moment. And then even when I struggled with what should I do about my mom? Should I just start working and stay at Biola longer, send money back home, whatever? I still had confidence I would complete school, and at some point God would give my mom some years so that I can do something, and that happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah.
She lived long enough to see me getting married. That was one prayer she always prayed, to see me getting married
Mhm.
and to see my children. And she was able to see my two children
Oh, that's awesome.
in person. Yeah, in person. I mean, she heard them, she embraced them, she did that, and that happened. And that was my ultimate prayer, asking God, please give her, you know, enough time.
Uh,
Yeah,
that's
that's the
awesome.
kind of, yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Okay, Tedla, I have a question about the lady from Fuller Seminary who came to Ethiopia,
Hmm.
and she said something about race.
Yeah.
And it would be remiss for me not to bring that up. It's in your book, but
Hmm.
it's very small section of your book. But she said something about your interest in these
Yeah.
the classic philosophy, ethics, epistemology,
Yeah.
metaphysics.
Metaphysics.
And she
Mhm.
said, that's for white people or something. And so what did
Yes,
you
she
say?
did.
And how do you understand her question and your response to that question?
So I joke by saying I am a white person in a black skin.
Yeah.
So I mean, she was. I don't think I said that in my book. I don't remember saying
Was she black?
she was Asian American, by the way.
She was Asian. Okay.
Yeah. So she was she was an American, Asian American, and she was with the dean, academic dean of Fuller Seminary at that time, and they were there, to for visit to give a public lecture. The academic dean was giving a public lecture, and then I had correspondence with him. I was interested in apologetics as well. He wrote a book on apologetics. So we had conversations, and then she hears me having a conversation about issues, and then she heard
Okay.
my interest in philosophy, and says that's like what white people do. I said, I was joking. I'm a white person in black skin. And I mean, here is
But
one
you
thing
don't
which
really
was so,
believe that though, right? I mean,
and
you
I don't,
believe,
I don't
yeah,
believe in, I believe there are skin color differences. That's it. I don't
right.
believe in race. So I
Yeah.
was just saying, I was trying to say to her, yeah, that's what many people think white people,
Yeah.
usually male whites, even at times even not even females.
Right.
So people say that, but I was just saying, yeah, my interest aligns with the interest of those mostly who do this. But I mean, as when it comes to this, just a point I want to make, like a side note. When it comes to African philosophy, for example, there's African philosophy, Asian philosophy, now this philosophy, that philosophy. Deep down in my heart, I don't believe in any of that. I
Yeah.
believe there's only human philosophy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but our
That comes
context,
across in your book very well, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is a sense and contexts to affect language, world reviews, those things. I mean,
Sure.
that no one is denying that. But at the
No.
end of the day, we are all human beings, and the questions
Right.
are questions for all of humanity.
Yeah.
And then in that sense, I'm not like a white person, black person, whatever. But I was just making a
Right.
joke. I was just saying,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
these are the kind of people who are interested in those questions. But I'm like
Right.
them, kind of. But of course,
Well,
and I don't have, for example, I tried. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you could ask very easily the lady, how do you know that? And what you mean by the question is exactly what in line with what you're saying is the
Yeah, I mean,
knowledge. How do you know?
we mentioned, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we just mentioned those areas of philosophy, my area of interest in philosophy, and she was saying, yeah, that's what white people believe, no other way.
Right, right.
Just
Well,
curious.
actually, a lot
And
of
she
white
was
people
not
don't
being
even like
racist.
it.
I think she was,
Yeah, I think a lot of white people
yeah,
don't
I
even
mean,
are
she
not
not
even
just
interested in that stuff. So,
making, I think,
yeah, we're having technical
there are
difficulties here.
no. There are many that they don't even know what metaphysics is. What,
No, yeah, I think
yeah,
most
yeah.
people on the
So
campus
that
don't
was
know
just an
what
interesting thing.
metaphysics
I mean,
is. Yeah.
yeah. And I was just making this comment, a brief comment. Uh, for example, I don't. You have a PhD in political science, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you know a lot about politics, yes. And I have interest in politics, but I could never develop a serious interest in political philosophy, for example. Okay, so you have seen in my book, I comment on Ethiopian politics,
Right.
but political philosophy as a discipline
Right.
or
Yeah.
social politics. If I have any interest, those things that interest me in political philosophy, they come from epistemology or metaphysics.
Yeah.
So that's still
Yeah.
me.
Sure.
If I
Yeah,
do
that
any
makes
political
sense.
philosophy, I will focus on issues that are metaphysics. Yeah, that's me.
Well,
That is my interest.
I think that those people who try to specialize in social or political philosophy and they don't first think about metaphysics and epistemology and ethics and they have logic, that
Yeah,
they're not going to do a very good job
yeah,
of political philosophy, I think,
yeah. So just
or
that's
anything else,
my interest,
constitutional
and
law.
there are times,
There's a
yeah,
lot of
it's very
stuff in
hard to. Uh-huh.
constitutional law that doesn't make a lot of sense because they haven't done the heavy lifting of being clear, of thinking through
Yeah.
what is it they're saying and how do you know and are you making a claim about reality here or what are you doing? So um the the book is
Yeah.
delightful for me to
Yeah.
read, and um it's called A Philosopher's
Yeah.
Testimony About the God Who Calls by Tedla G.
Thank you.
Woldeyohannes, and he's got a PhD from St. Louis University. He's visiting assistant professor of philosophy and director of the Center for Non-Western Studies at Huntington University, which is in Huntington, Indiana. Can people reach out to you by email if they want to chat with you
Correct.
about philosophy? Do you want to make
Yeah,
yourself
they can.
available, Tedla?
So if they Google my name, yeah, you can do my my initial, first name, initial, and the Woldeyohannes,
Uh-huh. And
T
at
Woldeyohannes. That's my email, and at my school. Yes,
Huntington.edu.
at my school. Yeah, Huntington
Okay.
EDU.
They'll
Yeah,
find it. They'll
yeah.
find it.
T Woldeyohannes at Huntington EDU.
Tedla, it was really wonderful hanging out with you again. I miss you. I miss our
Yeah,
times. I'll just share
yeah.
one brief memory I have. Just well, actually several memories, but
Yeah.
they're all summarized in the same way. And that is
Mhm.
when I knew Tedla, I knew always where I
Yeah.
could find Tedla. I could find Tedla in the library. I go to the Biola
Mhm.
library and I will find Tedla.
Yeah.
He was always in the library, and I feel like he knew where everything was in the library,
Mhm.
and he knew about books I'd never heard of. And this is my experience. My testimony about you is you were Socrates in the library, living in the library, and always, 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 if you were up, if you were walking, you were ready to talk anytime about philosophy. But if he was reading, okay, let him read. Make sure he
Mhm.
can read because he wants his time. But if he's
Yeah.
walking around, then you can talk to
Yeah.
him,
Mhm.
and he's Socrates.
Mhm. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the library. One time I think I wrote a letter to the library to extend library hours on Saturdays.
Did
Yeah,
you
because
really?
I didn't have enough time, enough library time. So I had to write a letter, I think, to extend library hours on Saturdays, I think. They would
Probably a
open
lot of the
later or
time.
something.
Probably a lot of the time you were in there writing famous philosophers and they're writing you back and you're reading what they said.
I
Well,
was
you're
busy doing that, and the library was, yeah, that's a good place.
Tedla. It was
So
very,
this was a great conversation, Lucas. Mhm.
yes, it was it was a blessing to have you, Tedla.
Thank you so much for arranging this conversation, and I missed your sense of humor. He could have been a famous comedian with like millions and millions of dollars if you wanted to do that.
Me? Wow. It's just
Yeah,
because of how
your sense
funny
of
I look.
humor. I would mention a few philosophers with a really, really good sense of humor. Of course, Alvin Plantinga, for sure,
Hmm.
and of course you, and also
Oh,
Brian Francis. Do you know Brian Francis?
no, I don't.
He's a philosopher, epistemology person, metaphysics person. He used to teach at Fordham
Oh,
University. He was a colleague of John Greco, I think.
oh, wow.
When you read his writings, his sense of humor is amazing. I told him by email one time. And William Lycan, philosophy of language, philosophy of
Really?
mind, William Lycan,
Oh, hold on. I'm writing these down. Will,
Lycan, Lycan, is that Lycan? William
Will,
Lycan. If Lycan is the way I say correct, L Y
how do
C
you,
A N.
how do you spell
William
his last name? Lycan.
William Lycan. Lycan. Is that
Oh,
Lycan?
yeah. I know the name.
Lycan.
I know the name. I have one of his books. He's funny?
That is a very, yeah, he's a,
Yeah, I actually have
oh
his philosophy of
my
language book,
goodness, I
actually.
can't read his work. Read that book. That's one of the books. His really sense of humor, and also Brian Francis. Francis, I don't know, is that correct? Frances, like could be a name
Okay.
for female. I don't know. Brian
And
Francis. So he
he's at
has a really
Fordham.
good sense of humor.
He's in New
He is
York.
not there now. I mean, he's somewhere in, no, not in America. He's somewhere in Middle East. From Facebook posts that I have seen.
Well,
I told him he's really funny.
that's
So you
very
are
high
funny.
compliment.
Alvin Plantinga is funny. Yeah,
That's very high compliment, Tedla.
yeah. You
Thank
are
you.
like among those guys. Now, William Lycan. Yeah, and
Wow.
Plantinga. Your sense of
Wow.
humor is amazing.
God bless you. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that.